cool, man. Yeah, so our podcast is about your journey in the music industry and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah.
But first, I want to talk about your skateboarding skills because that faking big spin flip was pretty tight.
Thank you for watching and for getting it right.
Yeah, man. Well, that's how I even got into music, was through skateboarding.
Yeah,
I skateboarded I'm still doing it now. Like you said, the quarantine sport, dude. Yeah, I have 2 kids. I'm trying to get them out on the skateboards and just cruise around. It's so fun.
It's great. I was hitting it pretty hard for a while, and then like the other day I ate it really hard, and I hadn't felt it hard, and since I was like a teenager, I just hit like a little pebble, and just like my truck hung up
flying,
and I just went straight on my, like I before I knew it, I was on the ground, and I landed like on my elbow and on my wrist, and I got really scared that like I wasn't gonna be able to play guitar, and I was like, this is what everybody keeps warning me, like, you can't do this anymore, you're gonna break your hand. And I'm like, no, I'm not, I know how to do this. And then I ate shit really hard.
That's funny. Oh man, I did the same thing like in February, kind of right before the lockdown. There's a skate park kind of close to our house, so I took my kids and we were just riding around, and I was trying to be like show offy, and I totally like sprained my ankle, like it hurt so bad. Man. And then like quarantine happened, so it's been like, it's healed up. So once this lifts a little bit, at least I know I can still skateboard.
That's good, man. Yeah, once it's in you, man, you can't get it out. You know, like,
it's
you always
fun.
You never stop looking for spots as you're in a car. You know what I mean?
You're totally. Look over, you're like, that's a dope rail. And
you try to explain that to somebody who never skated, and they think you're just like an insane person or like a man child or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
Anyway.
Like, that's so funny because I do the same thing. I'll look and see something like, oh, that'd be fun to skate.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool, Eliot. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, how did you get into music? Or actually, before that, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Baltimore.
Okay.
Y'all are in Canada, is that right?
No, San Diego, California.
That makes way more sense with skateboarding. I don't know why.
Yeah, Southern California. We've interviewed a ton of Canadian artists. Maybe that's
I don't know why I saw it on an email, and maybe I'm just confusing things. Well, obviously I'm confusing things, but anyway, San Diego is awesome.
Yeah.
I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland.
Okay.
And I lived there for a long time, but I've been in the South because depends where you are in the country, but definitely in Georgia and Tennessee. Maryland, even though it's below the Mason-Dixon line, does not qualify as the South. Although if you live in New England, they aren't so sure. So
okay.
Because I spent a couple of years there, and they were convinced that I was,
from the South.
Maybe a rebel. But then in the South, they were like, no, you're a Yankee. That's okay.
How funny. Cool. So grew up in Baltimore. How'd you get into music originally?
Well, you mentioned skateboarding, and so by the way, we're recording now, right?
Yeah, of course.
I didn't know when we began. Or maybe it's all in there. I don't know.
It's all in there. Let's leave it all.
Cool. That's fine. I was a skater, punk rock kid too. I assume that was probably what you were.
Yeah, exactly. That's when I got into like Iron Maiden and Misfits. Was just like from watching the old skate videos and being like, what is this? And watching the credits and then trying to go buy the CD or record at the store.
Oh man, absolutely. So as a teenager, that's what my musical interest was. But also at the same time, my grandparents were Pentecostal ministers. We went to Pentecostal church. There was a lot of church music. I think I probably sang for the first time in church. And then also there was a third influence, which was my parents had a big collection of folk music, vinyl records. And so I was always hearing Dylan and Joan Baez and Gordon Lightfoot and Sonny Terry, Brian McGee, all the stuff that was coming out in the 60s and 70s. Mm-hmm. And so, just kind of osmosis, like that gospel music and that folk music and that blues music was always around. And so even though I first turned toward punk rock, it didn't take me too long to come back home to the music that was just going on in my house and around my world.
Very cool. What was the first instrument you learned how to play?
Well, I took violin lessons because my older brother wanted to take violin lessons. And of course, my older brother was the coolest person I knew at the time. Cool. So I had to take violin lessons. I was terrible at it. I begged my parents to let me quit for 4 years, and they finally did let me quit. And then I picked up guitar in high school. around the time I was skating. And so that was the first, but I took to that like really quickly. And then my first guitar was electric guitar, and I was, trying to do punk stuff. But then as I discovered the folk music, I wanted acoustic guitar, and I found like pretty early on in my lessons that like the right hand stuff, like the finger picking, Travis picking, it just came really natural to me. And I just instantly started writing songs like on the acoustic guitar, and pretty much that's what I've been doing ever since.
Wow. Yeah, I can't, all I can play is power chords. They're like regular chords, but that finger picking thing, like forget about it. Can you play piano?
I can play some piano. My dad plays piano, and so there was always one in the house, and he played in church and stuff. So I kind of would mess around, but then, he was kind of tough on me. Like I'd say, is this good? And he'd be like, no, that's not very good. So for a while, I was kind of afraid of it. And then later on, I was in different positions where there was a piano around, and so I have written some songs on the piano. I can kind of bang away at it and do some passable, kind of like a Jackson Brownie, kind of like just banging out chords kind of thing. Sure. But I love the piano. It's just so evocative. But I wouldn't say I'm very competent. I was just
curious because you can play, that type of guitar with the finger picking. I didn't know if it came naturally to kind of do the, high end on the with the right hand.
It's a different creature, but like I did play a couple records ago. I did track a song live on the piano. So I mean, I am maybe selling a little short. Like I've definitely done some piano, but cool. I don't, like in my shows, I don't really do piano, and I'm still a little intimidated by it.
Sure. Yeah.
I feel comfortable saying that I'm a pretty good guitar player, but I would never say that about piano.
Right on. Okay, so you learned piano, you started writing songs right away, and then from there, did you start? Did you start a band? Were you playing like out in coffee shops or open mic night type things?
Yeah, I mean, I took to it really quickly, and kind of consumed me pretty fast once I started writing, which was almost immediately from when I got the acoustic guitar. I mean, I was writing electric for like a punk band, but it was honestly pretty much garbage what I was writing. Like it wasn't any good. The band wasn't any good. But once I kind of made this turn where I started listening to more of the folk music and playing some of the folk music and writing for acoustic, all I really wanted to do was write songs. And I remember I have three brothers. One of my little brothers, he found a clipping in the newspaper for the Songwriters Association, the Baltimore Songwriters Association, that met every, I want to say Monday night, but it might have been Sunday night in Fells Point in Baltimore. And so I was probably 18 or something, and 17 maybe, probably a senior in high school. And I went down there and met this group of folks who are older than me and kind of into, kind of like ex-hippies and stuff, but they were listening to the kind of music that I was listening to too. And we'd sit around every week and we'd play songs for each other and critique them. And that little community and that kind of music just put this passion in me. And it didn't take me too long before I was, trying to get gigs at coffee shops and all that.
Tell me about those first gigs.
I can't even remember them. I remember, I mean, they were, set up in the corner and play. And I'm glad that there wasn't anybody videotaping it and putting it on YouTube back then, because I mean, it probably was really bad. But I do remember the first time I don't remember the circumstances, but I remember the feeling the first time someone paid me to play a show. I just couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, you will pay me to do something. I would pay you to do this. Yeah. And that was like the light bulb click. It was like, you have to figure out a way to make this your life because this is too good to be true.
Sure.
And so I spent, pretty much the rest of my life figuring out how to make that work.
How did you stay in Baltimore? Like, how did you, what was next in your music career?
So I stayed there for a while. I moved to New England for a girl that I met. We lived in Massachusetts. At the time, there's a pretty thriving folk scene in Boston, and I thought, well, I'll be closer to Boston. But she wanted to live in the woods, so we ended up living in Western Massachusetts, which was like 2 hours from Boston, which was closer than Baltimore to Boston, but far enough to really not make me part of that scene. So when that relationship kind of didn't work out, I hightailed it back south and just kept going south. And I had a friend who was another songwriter like myself who was touring around playing folk venues, coffee shops, little clubs. We were both kind of doing that in our early 20s. And he was from South Carolina, and he had moved to Asheville, North Carolina. That's where we met. I opened for him at this club called the Great Eagle. And I remember it was a CD release show, and that's where we met. We became friends, and we kept in touch. We booked a little tour around the Southeast together, and, you know, Atlanta, Charlotte, Raleigh, Asheville, probably, I don't know, maybe Chattanooga, Jacksonville, Florida. We just did this little loop around the Southeast. And he also had moved from Asheville to Atlanta. And so we kind of I came down. I was kind of not sure what I was doing at that point. Like, I had just broken up with this girl. I'd moved out of New England. Didn't want to get back from Baltimore. Didn't know where I wanted to go. And so we hung out at his place for a while, and then we put this little tour together. By the end of the tour, we were a band. We had a band name. We were singing and playing together, and I was moving to Atlanta. So wow. So I put all my things I had in my little, I had a little Saturn sedan, you know, and I just like rolled up a futon, shoved it in the back, you know, I had like nothing, you know, and I moved to Atlanta, crashed with him. Actually, he ended up getting me a place where he had a friend who was like, in college, going to seminary, and some of this is in my songs if you ever dig in deep enough. So I moved in with this girl who I had never met in person, and and it's it's the kind of thing you can do when you're like 22 or something, right? Right. You don't never do it again. You didn't learn your lesson. So I packed up all my stuff and I drove down from Baltimore to Atlanta. It's about an 11-hour drive. Wow. And I got there in the middle of the night, and you know, moved into this stranger's house. I woke up the next morning and met my roommate. And I spent the next, you know, 5-6 years in this band called the Brilliant Inventions with my buddy Josh. And we, you know, and we kind of had our little career arc. And I started playing this club in Atlanta called Eddie's Attic, which is kind of like the Hotel Cafe of Atlanta. It's like this listening room, but it's also kind of legendary because a lot of great artists have come out of it. So we'd go there and play the open mic, which is a contest, and if you win the Monday night, you get to come back and play the 6-month like tournament style single elimination contest. And at the end of that contest, there's like one grand winner, and you get like $1,000 in studio time. But like people like John Mayer won it after the Indigo Girls. Other people came out of that scene. So so we made that our goal, and we did win it. And then we got some management, and we started, you know, touring and doing that whole thing. And then inevitably that band broke up, and I had to figure out what to do again. Started over as a solo artist. And anyway, there's lots more to the story, but that's
gist.
that's like the first quarter of the story.
I love it.
Yeah.
So from there is when you started your solo project.
So then after that, I kind of went back to being a solo artist, but now, like, you know, I thought I was like at the end of my career because, you know, we never got famous, but we had, you know, we got further together than we ever did as solo acts. And we had some big things that seemed like breaks, you know, like the management stuff. And we had industry looking at us. And so we thought we were about to, you know, hit the
sure.
And it just never quite happened. It just kind of like almost happened. It didn't happen. And then, you know, he just kind of, he wised up and got out of the game and got a job that pays and got married. And, you know, and then I was just like, I don't really know how to do anything else, but I spent all this time, all these years creating this band, this duo. You know, we had a stage, we had banter, and we had a whole thing, and it worked, and we had a fan base. And, you know, I had to ask myself, like, you know, I knew I couldn't do that as a solo act, and I had to ask myself, like, could I pull it off by myself? Would it be worth doing? And in the end, it was the best thing that could have happened to me because it made me ask myself the tough question, like, well, what do I want to do? What kind of music do I want to make? You know, who do I want to be on stage? Now that this is like, there's an opportunity when things end, because now, you know, there's all these openings, there's freedom. So I, at that point, started writing. We were kind of a quirky pop acoustic duo, and I started writing these Americana kind of music after that, like this a little more rootsy, a little more heavy, a little darker, definitely riskier in a lot of ways. And I just thought, like, well, I'll try and make a record like this because this is what I like more anyway. And if no one likes it, then I'll just quit. Because what are you gonna do? But I made
people liked it.
So yeah, I made this solo record. I just put it out myself. I didn't have anyone on my team at that point, and I made this little record. Yeah, it was Blackbirds. And then some of these local magazines started picking it up and writing about it, and people were telling me personally, and they started coming to the shows. And then I noticed my audience started changing. It got a little bit older. Some of the kids who were into like the goofy stuff we did kind of fell off, and these other people came in who were a little bit more into that style of music. And that was the first record. And then there's been what, 4 since then. So a lot has happened in between now and then, but that was how it got started.
Okay. So you put out Blackbirds, it starts getting a little bit of attention. Were you able to then, like when you started working on the next record, was your fan base just like organically growing? And like when you put out, did you ever tour on the Blackbirds album, or was it just playing around the area?
I toured, but it wasn't, like for a long time, not just Blackbirds, but probably the next record too. Like I was teaching music on the side, or at one point I was working in a wine bar. Like I was doing whatever I could to keep my, pay the rent and pay the bills and all that kind of stuff. So I wasn't able to be full-time back then. And the notion of like now you think about like artists, they write a record, they go in the studio, they record the record, they plan a tour, there's a cycle that, all that was foreign to me. It was just like every day, like, what can I do today to help myself? Like it wasn't strategic. It wasn't so well planned. I was wearing all the hats, which I still wear a lot of the hats. But so, I think when people ask questions like, hey, did you tour on that record? They're also kind of underneath that question is like, were you in the music industry and were you doing it seriously? And I didn't know what I was doing. You know what I mean? But I did play shows, sure. And locally, my fan base was growing, and I would tour, but usually just me. And I did that for a long time, and I drive, and as the records came out and I got a few more fans with each one, and each year going by, I drive a little further. So, I started going up and down the East Coast, and then, sometimes I go out west or I go to Texas, and eventually, just kind of meeting people all over, just growing it organically, grassroots, just hacking my way through.
Were you just going by yourself, or did you bring people with you?
It depended. I probably did the bulk of everything by myself because it was easier and cheaper. But I would bring people when I could. Whenever I played regionally, I'd always have a full band because if I could afford to do it, and it's more fun. But
was it hard? Was it hard to drive? Like, were you driving to Texas by yourself and then playing?
Yeah, I did that.
And then...
Yeah, I've done that more than once.
Was that nerve-wracking the first time you did? I mean, you're showing up to these. You're driving cross country.
Yeah.
I mean, you get there. Like, is it going to happen? Or are there weirdos around? I don't know. You're by yourself in a foreign area.
Yeah, I mean, and I should say, like, I'm not the only person I have a whole peer group of people who have done these kind of things. So in our world, it's not that weird. Although when you take a step back, it's pretty weird. I get that. But like everything under the sun has happened, I've gotten to a venue and my show was double booked. I've gotten to a venue and the venue wasn't there. I've gotten to a venue, I've like anything you can think of has probably happened at some show. I've been doing it long enough, and I've traveled to enough places that, but I would say the majority of the time, you get somewhere and it sounds passable to good, and there are some people or a lot of people, and you get to play for them and they appreciate it. And there's a whole scale of what that looks like, from you made 3 or 4 fans who bought records and wanted you to come back to that town, to, a room full of people opening for a bigger act and they fall in love with you and you come back and play the venue again, and everything in between.
Sure. Yeah. What was like the next kind of milestone that happened for you after putting out, those first earlier records?
So, things built from Blackbirds to the next record, which was called Milwaukee, very organically. But I didn't have any kind of big break come around. I can't remember if there was probably something in there that felt like a break, but it wasn't, But there's nothing I can point to right now. But then what happened after that was a small label in Atlanta was kind of new, took interest in me, and as my career was, my name was at least regionally getting more attention, and they signed me, and that's when I got to make a record with Dave Cobb. So that was a big break.
Yeah,
that was a big break. So
was that a pretty cool phone call? I'm sure, getting that, like, hey, we want to, sign you. Yeah. Well, it wasn't so much. It wasn't out of the blue like that. I was aware of them. They were aware of me, and it was a conversation that kind of happened over a period of time. Sure.
So, it wasn't like, wow, I hit the jackpot. It was more like a courtship,
Right.
But as it started to get real, and I realized that they were going to put some real money into it, and then when we landed, didn't strike with Dave Cobb, like that, at that point, I did start to have that same kind of feeling that I had way back with the Brilliant Inventions when we were climbing up our arc and thinking, wow, this is actually going somewhere. But I had the, benefit of having been there once before. And so I feel like that made it, a lot less addictive or potentially dangerous. Like, I was like, this may happen, but it also may not happen. So I'm gonna be all right. But it was exciting for sure.
Wow.
And making that record was exciting, and that I can see that as a inflection point where definitely think I started to get more attention, started to actually, get national and international press and radio play and all those things that I hadn't really ever had before.
Wow, that's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
So you got to work with Dave Cobb, and was that through the label, or did you get to choose what producer you wanted to use? Like, how did that work?
Well, I at the time I signed with this label, but I was still doing a lot of my own stuff. And I still, like I keep saying, like, I continue to do a lot of my own stuff just because I just come from that indie DIY, mentality. Maybe it's punk rock in me, but I do a lot of stuff. And I had a couple managers. The Brilliant Inventions had a pretty big time manager, but then, as a solo act, I had, more like people come into the role and help me out. But there was this period of time I got signed to this label, but I didn't have a manager yet.
Oh.
And so I had, I made up a fake manager, and I had a fake email account. Well, it was a real email account. Just didn't go to anybody. Just went to me. And I actually emailed Dave Cobb's manager on behalf of Eliot Bronson and sent him my demos. And
that's brilliant.
he probably would not appreciate me telling the world that, but I think at this point he's a big enough star that they probably weeded it out. But they actually, he emailed me back. Well, he emailed, my manager back and said, yeah, Dave likes this. You should come meet him.
You're like, so let me tell Eliot.
I was like, wow, that email was a pretty fun one to get. And so then I went to the label and I said, hey, Dave Cobb's interested. And then they were like, let's go to Nashville. So we took a trip up and we met him and sat in his home studio and talked about music for an afternoon and planned a record. And then later that year, we made it.
Wow. Yeah. Was that like a totally different experience than recording the first 2 albums you did?
Yeah. It was very different. I mean, the quality was, we had access to things that I didn't have access to. And it was different too, because I always made music with my friends. And, I can come back to it, but my new record I made with my friends, which I'm totally psyched about. And
yeah, we're going to talk about that for sure.
It was a great, it was the right choice. But at this point, I'd only done stuff with friends, and it felt like a big step to make a record with, somebody I thought was like more pro. And so, and we brought I brought some of my guys in, but then he brought most of the other guys in, and, they were all such great players, and, Nashville, that whole ethos, or the whole, mystique, I guess is the word.
Yeah.
We made it rather quickly, which, it was in a couple weeks. So, Dave has he has a style, which is like really trying to capture that lightning in a bottle kind of thing, where it's all very off the cuff. It's just like go, track live, look for that, magic take. And so that was a different feeling too. It was it really felt like things were, it was a big change and a big adjustment, but even now that feels like a while ago. So,
from that record, that was your first release with the label. And you said they were able to get you some radio play and stuff. Were you getting like bigger shows and put on bigger tours after the release of that album?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't go to playing like, stadiums or anything like that.
Sure. But
obviously, but I was touring more and more, and touring with some other folks. I mean, it was still, the label was new and they were figuring out how to do it. And I was still doing a lot of the work that, other people, I don't know, that I wish I didn't have to do, I guess I should say it. But, then I got some management, and, we had a lot of the other pieces of the puzzle that you need to make a record successful, but we didn't have all of them. And it was an interesting kind of experiment with that particular label that, it kind of ended, I don't know, more quickly than it needed to, maybe, or something like that. Without getting into all the gory details of it. Yeah. So, it was hugely beneficial in my career. And then we kind of ran into some stumbling blocks, and this just seems like the theme of my life. Like, things are taking off, and then something blows up, and it just comes crashing down, and I pick up the pieces, and then we got to figure out what how to go on. And that cycle has just repeated itself many times in my life and career, which is interesting. I'm as I'm saying this, I'm realizing it to be true. Yeah, it's not all bad either, but it's interesting.
Yeah, and you put out James next. That was the next record.
Yeah, so I made that with Dave too. It was a shorter record. It was kind of.
He produced that album as well.
Yeah, he did.
Oh, okay.
That record was, it wasn't supposed to be the record that we made. The record we made was not the record I was trying to make didn't get made, and James is what got made instead. And I love James. And actually, it's the first record that I ever got songs placed in. I got a song. I had a song in Criminal Minds and another song in that show Yellowstone. Both of those are from James, and the only songs I got are from
my brother-in-law loves Yellowstone. He was actually just telling us about that yesterday, I believe. We were celebrating my father-in-law's birthday, and he's like, "You guys got to watch Yellowstone."
Oh, cool! Yeah.
That's rad. That must have been cool to hear your songs and shows and stuff.
Yeah, that was really cool. So that record did, it had some cool things happen with that record that hadn't happened before. So, but I say that it was not the record that I was meaning to make, because I had more songs. We made it a shorter record, and it was all business stuff. The reasons that it ended up being what it was all to do with people not agreeing. Again, I don't want to get into it, but it's just basically like, we want you to do this, and then, their lawyers and discussions and people not coming to terms. And so, what ended up happening was I found my own funding for that record, and but not enough to make like what I really wanted to make, or what the label would have made. So I ended up making this short record, and then shopping that. And it ended up getting picked up by this little label in Nashville, Rock Ridge, and they put it out. Oh, cool. So it was definitely moving forward. Like, it was definitely the next step. like I said, those cool things happened, and then I moved to Nashville while that record was still new.
Oh, okay.
And so that was really cool too. But even saying all of that, it was, man, that year of the year that led up to that record coming out was one of the toughest. But that seems to be the pattern, because then it only got tougher.
Well, it looks like you had quite a bit of success with that record, though, with James.
Yeah, I mean, relatively, it did really well for me. It definitely brought in some things that I'd never gotten before, and placements are really nice, and attention that the placements, and and all the while my audience was expanding slowly. I mean, it's not like I didn't have the benefit of like a bigger label or sometimes you meet, like, you get signed to a label, or you get signed to a big manager, or you could be a big booking agent. Like, finding one piece of that puzzle that's very plugged into the industry can be life-changing, because those people can then say, all right, well, I'm gonna put you on the road with my other actor, who happens to be Jason Isbell, or it happens to be, or stuff like that. That's what happens. You see it happen. But you have to kind of get a foot in the door one way or another. And I'm saying that as somebody who's made 2 records with Dave Cobb, so I get it. Like, other people might be like, well, you were in the door for sure, but it's so hard. Even when it looks like you're in, there's an inner circle of the inner circle of the inner circle. You find your way into one level, and then you realize you're locked out of the next level. And
sure. You still have to move up the chain.
It's a video game. So I never, I didn't get that piece to like really knock the doors down and put me, but at the same time, I'm out there gigging, making fans at every show. The shows are getting better. I'm traveling, playing more dates of the year. I'm able to quit doing other jobs and just play music for a living. So this is in no way me complaining, but yeah, like, it was still tough. It's just, it just stayed hard. Just a little less hard, but still hard.
Yeah. And then you had like about 3 years in between that album, and you just put out your new record, Empty Spaces.
Yeah.
So from there, tell me about, the process between that album and then what, the new record you just put out.
So, man, I got to tell you, I've never had an interview where I've like laid out the whole story.
Sorry. If you don't feel like going over, I don't
know. No, it's fine. Okay. It's fine. It's funny. It's just interesting because I'm just noticing that I haven't told all of these stories, the whole story start to finish, in quite a while. And probably the last time I did, it involved, drinking and a late night. So with somebody I trusted, but, and of course I'm leaving out quite a bit, but yeah, so moved to Nashville, and, I'm skipping a big thing in my personal life. So I was engaged and in this 10-year relationship that ended, and it ended a couple of years ago. I guess it's 3, coming up on 3.
Wow.
And so it was a huge life change, and that precipitated my move to Nashville because, I'd been in Atlanta for a long time, and I'd always thought, I kept seeing my friends and people that I knew from Atlanta, but also all over the country, moving to Nashville. And it seemed like, man, is that the place I'm supposed to be? I made records there, my producer's there, the industry is there. Do I need to do that? But my fiance, she didn't really want to live there. In fact, she wanted to live out in the West, so in the mountains, which is what my record is about. And so eventually that divide kind of was a wedge between us. But after things ended, I was like, well, shit, let's try this Nashville thing. So I did kind of what I had done, 15 years earlier, and packed up my stuff and moved to Nashville, and thought that I would figure out what the next level was, climbing up that ladder, the next inner circle. And I figured, there's just so many people in Nashville that I'm sure, I will make better connections and continue to grow my career. And, and some of that did happen over the last couple of years. I did a lot of co-writing, met a lot of folks, and but with that big breakup and a lot of soul searching, and my misadventures in the music business, I came to this decision that I needed to make a record just for myself, which is kind of the way I made Blackbirds way back. Was like, these songs are so personal. They mean so much to me. I don't want to put them in the hands of somebody who doesn't trust me, know me, believe in me 100%, you know. And so that's why I ended up getting my old band together. Well, not my old band, they were my band, but they were in Atlanta, and going back to Atlanta and co-producing the record with my friend in his home studio, so I could make the record that I really wanted to make, instead of doing, which is what I thought I would do, which was like find another, maybe work with Dave again, or maybe find another producer who's on his way up and hires Nashville cats and just like make a badass record and try to find someone to shop it and do the whole industry thing, which is what I've been doing. And I got this message, you know, like, you know, I don't know, not like I downloaded this message, but like I just felt very deeply like, you know what you have to do, dude, is you need to make the record you want to hear with the people that you trust and who love you. And that, I mean, I feel like I made the best record I've ever made that way. Yeah. So I feel like it was the right decision.
Sure. And you know, it must be pretty validating, to put that album out. And then this time around, you don't have people telling you the song isn't what they want it here, or, you know what I mean? Like you're talking about having that, all the other opinions involved. Pretty nice. It was really just artistically gratifying to go into the studio and just have the time and the freedom to play and create and to experiment and look for sounds that I, you know, heard in my head but didn't know how to produce. So it didn't, you know, like couldn't do it instantly, you know. And that could only happen with people who really trusted and believed in me. So yeah, I mean, I got to like hold the levers, the reins in all kinds of ways that I never did. I even like edited some of the stuff on Pro Tools, which I've never even used before. But at some point, like I was getting into the machinery side. Yeah.
Well, the production for sure, and the arrangement for sure. But like I remember, like I was trying to edit some stuff, and my engineer and co-producer, you know, I was giving him instructions, and finally he was just like, dude, do you want me to teach you this? Because I mean, this is taking longer for you to explain it to me. Just sit down. And he just walked me through, you know, a little crash course in editing on Pro Tools. And I was like, yeah, man, it was so cool. I mean, I've made enough records now, you think I would have done some of that stuff, but I hadn't. And, you know, just to get things to sound as close to, you never get all the way there, but as close to what you dream of hearing as possible is just artistically very fulfilling. So I'd never had that experience, at least not in a long time, you know, since maybe I started out just doing home recordings or something. But yeah, it was great. It was great. And I loved making that record.
What was your favorite song to write and put down on the album?
That's tough. You know, so the record, we recorded it last year and, you know, it just came out. And so it's been a journey and just in that period of time too, that I've been living with this record. And now that it's come out, I'm hearing it vicariously through the ears of, you know, my fans and friends who had never heard it before. And so it changes, you know. So like which song, like if you ask me today, you know, like what's the song to when I was writing it, or when I was in the studio, or when I'm listening back now, I just it's changed so much. At one time or another, every single song has been my favorite.
That's cool.
You know, it's been very fluid like that. So yeah, I don't know. It's very tough. There's a couple, you know, I think Empty Spaces, the title track, is one of the best songs I've ever written because of its simplicity. I really think like economy of lyrics is something that's really interesting. Like to me, like a song like Tom Petty, like basically every Tom Petty song, but like don't back, you know, won't back down. You think about like, stand me up to gates, I won't down, you know, stand my ground, won't be turned around. Like it just like, it's so simple. And that's where the strength comes from, as opposed to the idea that like, you know, it's simple means simple-minded, which is, you know, it can mean that, but it's not always the case. Sometimes simple just means that you've boiled it down to its essence and you don't need to say more. And it's really powerful that way. So like in that kind of way, I felt really proud of Empty Spaces because it says so little. There's 2 lines, chorus, 2 lines. chorus. And you know, in the first two lines, I rhyme the end of it's just the lines end with the same word. It doesn't even really rhyme, truly.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's actually what makes it cool, as opposed to what easily somebody else might think, well, that's what makes it, you know, that makes it lame. But like in this case, I feel like it really works.
Right.
So,
I mean,
you know,
some of the best songs ever written, like you said, are the simplest ones. I mean, look at I mean, could just take a couple lines and you have, you know, a major hit. So
yeah. So that's, and you know, that of course I also love big old wordy songs from time to time too. But that's I was really proud of how Empty Spaces turned out.
That's awesome. And you put the record out while we're all in quarantine.
Yeah, I did. Was that in quarantine?
Was that something that you were kind of debating, or was it like, you know, I'm going to put this out no matter what?
There was a little debate in my mind in the beginning. But if I'm being honest, I don't think there was ever really any chance I wasn't going to put it out, just because it was so long in the making. It was so personal. I had invested so much time and effort into all the pieces of it, that the idea of sitting on it, you know, for a year or something like that, I think it just would have been too hard to do. I don't think I would have been able to cope with quarantine, knowing that I had this project that I couldn't share. And then what am I going to do? Like write another record and put that behind it, or you know, the notion of waiting to the right time, if it ever comes, when it comes, you know, it just seemed like a terrible idea. And it seemed like it's the opposite of the direction that I had been moving in, which is to get more and more real, and just do it myself, and just trust my instincts, and bring my friends on board, and make music I want to hear. The idea to try to, at this point, turn and game something for the sake of making more money or something like that, it seemed like against every intuition I had. And then the last thing I'd say about that is that once I did make the decision, it totally felt right. And it felt like, you know, this is a really interesting, I'm about to say something totally obvious, but this is a very interesting moment we're living through. And, you know, we're going to be talking about this moment for the rest of our lives.
I know.
They're going to ask us about it, you know, and future generations. Well, you lived through the Dust Bowl, you know, whatever.
Well, yeah, it's like, it reminds me of like a 9/11 thing, you know, like people like I know I have kids that are, my children, I have a 12-year-old and a 4-year-old, and I remember in one of his classes in like 4th or 5th grade, they were asking, like, to go home and ask your parents what if they were what they remember of 9/11. And I think that's going to be their thing. Go ask your parents what they remember of when the coronavirus pandemic shut down the world.
Right, absolutely. And 9/11 was one day, but this is like
this is months upon months upon months. Right, sure.
And it's not just the pandemic. I mean, it's the political environment we're in, which is unprecedented, and at least for quite a while. All that's going to be talked about for a long time. And when I thought about that, well, I thought, like, when we look back on this and we talk about it, you know, I want to remember that I, in the middle of that, put out this great piece of art that I believed in. Not that in the middle of that, I decided to shelve my record for career reasons.
Right.
Like, I just did. Like, that's not who I want to be. So, and I have seen quite a response, not just to the record, but to art in general. People rallying around artists, people rallying around art they believe in, and a hunger and a need for connection and meaning, which is what art provides. So I think in a lot of ways it's a very fertile time for that. You know, art thrives in with struggle. That's where the best art's born from.
Sure. And
so, you know, it may not be the kind of thing where I'm going to see the material rewards of it overnight, but I think when the story is written, it will bear out fruit in a way that it wouldn't if I had just waited and put it out later on.
And to promote the album, have you been, like, I noticed that you did some live streams, and my favorite one is the picture of you with the, like, in the Beatles, your head, like, I was like, this is great. So I did notice you've been doing those live streams. Have you been is that how you've been kind of trying to promote the record?
Well, it's not necessarily the way I've been promoting the record, but yes, it is. But it's not the only. I was doing that before. I've been doing the live stream since March. The record came out in July, so I do a live stream every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And the first one was just kind of like, well, we're stuck at home. Let's do a live stream. Before we knew what was ahead of us, and it was, people, sent me money for it and tuned in, and it was a big success. And we thought, let's try it again. And then before I knew it, I was doing one every week. I haven't missed a week. I think we've done 21. I'm not sure.
Wow.
And after like doing 2 or 3, I thought, everybody's doing this, first of all. And now, it's like it used to be like I would play the club. And then, Jason Isbell would play the theater, and then Tom Petty would play the arena. But now we're all playing.
Yeah, we're all playing the computer.
We're all playing the same thing. So, I noticed that there's a lot of competition for the time and for the attention. So I just started going, well, how can I make this fun and interesting? So I started theming my weeks. And every week we have a theme, still the Beatles theme, but I've done, we did all the decades, 90s, 80s, 70s, 60s, and 50s. And then we did Tom Petty, we did the Beatles, we did Jackson Browne, Lucinda Williams. I did one called, my show's called I Love Your Guts Show, because it's just this thing I started saying as a joke and it stuck. So it's I love your Beatles guts, I love your Petty guts. We did one called I Love Your Drunken Guts. It was all songs about getting drunk. We did Summertime Guts. Man, I know I'm forgetting some, but I'm
the
gonna
guilty pleasure one is pretty
guilty
funny too.
Pleasure Guts. Yeah, that was
Photoshop yourself into it again.
Yeah, I started just goofing. I mean, it's a great thing about this period, and it's what I've tried to tell my friends who are artists as well, is like, I feel like anything goes in a lot of ways, because no one's gonna blame you. Like, no one's gonna go like, oh yeah, nice. You're sitting there and photoshopping yourself into pictures, or whatever it might be. I mean, we're all just trying to figure out ways to cope. So just like have fun and play and don't worry about it. So that's the mentality I've kind of adopted. And yeah, I photoshopped myself, but I started doing that, I don't know when, about like halfway through it. And I've just, my favorite, I think, is there's two. Well, my favorite is the Jackson Browne one. Jackson Browne, I took the cover of the record I'm Alive, which is Jackson Browne, like very like, cool looking, sticking his head out of the water. And it's just like you just see his neck, the head up. And I took the picture. You looking at it right now?
I'm trying to find it.
So he's in the water. It's the record I'm Alive. And it's him like neck up in the water. And so I like took a selfie of myself. That's redundant, but I took a selfie. With my shirt off, with like 2 arms up in the air, like flailing. And then, so I'm kind of like, and then I cut and pasted that into the water. So like, I look like I'm behind, he's looking cool coming out of the water, all sexy and cool. And I'm in the back, like drowning.
Like drowning behind him.
Flailing out. I just crack myself up,
Yeah, man, some of these are really, really funny.
But so what I found is like I've built this weekly fan base, and they come back every week, and they not only talk to me, and I'll make up songs on the spot with their suggestions and all kinds of games and stuff like that. But then they talk to each other too, and they connect with each other, and it's become this little community gathering. And man, I mean, it's like how long have I been playing music? I've never done anything like this or thought to do anything like this. In fact, I would have been embarrassed to do some of the goofy stuff I'm doing now. But again, it's like, what are your options, man? Like, so it's a blessing, man. It's a great thing to not take yourself seriously. It's a great thing to like have fun and play. And I think it's the spirit that we all started making music with, which is like, let's just do something. Let's just make something.
Have fun.
Let's just put something out. Let's just go play a show. And as you get into these, into this music business kind of thing, you think, well, I got to do it right. I got to get the right people. I've got to find the right tour. I've got to, and you start, and some of those things you get, and sometimes they help you, and sometimes they get you into Criminal Minds, and that's really cool. But then other times you start thinking really small, and you start narrowing your vision and your creativity. And I think that's where it becomes a major bummer. And that's when you make boring records, and that's when you become a not interesting person. So I really fighting those impulses in myself these days. And it's helped a lot, and I've noticed it's helped me grow my fans and connect to my fans on a weekly basis.
That's awesome. Yeah, man. I love it. I love all the the album art stuff that you're doing is hilarious. The record's dope. Yeah, I really dig it.
Thanks, man.
And thank you so much for doing this with me today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been fun.
I just have one more question.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Oh man. Okay. Don't do it.
I've heard that one a few times, actually.
Run the other way. Yeah, no, I've got tons of advice. Of course, I've made enough mistakes at this point that I can, I can share those, and which I think. Okay, I'll tell you. There's two pieces to it that I try to stick to. I think if you follow these two rules or guidelines, I think you're going to be all right in general. And that is, whatever you make, one, if it's music or then it's listening. But whatever you make it something that you want to hear, you want to see, you want to consume. That speaks to you directly. If you don't make something that you love, you have zero chance of convincing anybody else to love it. It just won't work. So if you try to game out like what the crowd wants, what's going to be popular, it almost never works. You can smell it on the product, but on the other hand, if you make something that you love, and even if it's like, it's like, if I can hear a song by somebody, it's not even in the genre that I listen to or even like, but if I'm convinced that it means something to them, I'm in. I'm gonna want to hear it. I'm probably gonna want to hear it again. So that first thing is just make sure that whatever you're making, you love it, you care about it, you're doing it for yourself first. And then the second piece, which is equally important, is respect your audience. And that means, like, if you make it for yourself, but don't ask people to read your journal. Like, ask yourself, is this fair to put this out there for people? If I'm doing a show, like, have I done the work to make this interesting to other people? Is it self-indulgent? So if you make something that's true to you and you respect the people you're offering it to, I think you're going to find some kind of success on some level. I don't know where you're going to be in the scale of money and fame, but you'll be able to carve out a life for yourself. And I think that's probably the best thing you can ask for.